Welcome to Joystick News, where we unravel the mysteries and controversies shaping the gaming world. Today, we're venturing into one of the most polarizing topics: the ethics of violence in video games. Is it mere entertainment, a reflection of our darker impulses, or something far more profound? Prepare for a journey into the origins, controversies, and moral complexities that keep this debate alive. Let's dive in. The room is dimly lit, the arcade machines buzz like an electric symphony, and a young gamer grips the joystick tightly. The game, Mortal Kombat. The year, the early 1990s. The violence, unlike anything the gaming world had ever seen. When Mortal Kombat hit the scene, its pixelated fatalities, gruesome and shocking for the time, stirred up a whirlwind of controversy. Parents protested, claiming the game corrupted young minds. Politicians demanded regulation, claiming it threatened societal values. The chaos resulted in one of gaming's most significant turning points: the creation of the Entertainment Software Rating Board (ESRB). But even with ratings in place, a question emerged that couldn't be silenced. Does playing violent games impact real life behavior? And if it does, what are the ethical responsibilities of those who create them? The controversy surrounding Mortal Kombat wasn't just about pixels, it was about the ethics of immersion. After all, unlike movies or books, games make you an active participant. You're not just watching violence, you're orchestrating it. The stage was set for decades of debate. And so began the balancing act between creative freedom and societal responsibility. In the wake of tragic real world events, video games often find themselves in the crosshairs of blame. Let's go back to the late 1990s when the Columbine High School massacre shocked the world. In the aftermath, the media zeroed in on the perpetrators' gaming habits, particularly their interest in Doom, a game celebrated for its fast paced, chaotic combat. The argument was simple: could violent games desensitize players to real world violence? For years, this narrative dominated headlines. But as researchers began to study the relationship between violent games and aggression, the results told a more nuanced story. Some studies showed that playing these games might temporarily increase aggressive thoughts, but they stopped short of proving a direct link to violent actions. Other research pointed out the cathartic effects of gaming, suggesting it might actually reduce real world aggression by providing a safe outlet for frustration. The American Psychological Association eventually weighed in, stating that the connection between video games and violent behavior was, at best, minimal. Still, the question remained: even if these games don't cause violence, could they normalize it? Could they blur the lines between virtual morality and real world ethics? Imagine you're a game developer and you're creating a world where stakes are high and every choice matters. Do you include violence as a narrative tool? And if so, how do you ensure it's meaningful, not gratuitous? Games like The Last of Us Part Roman 2 grapple with these questions head on. In this post apocalyptic tale, violence isn't just a mechanic, it's a theme. Every brutal encounter reflects the game's core message about the cycles of revenge and the cost of survival. Players are forced to confront the consequences of their actions, often feeling uncomfortable rather than triumphant. But not every game approaches violence with such depth. Titles like Manhunt and Postal have faced harsh criticism for their unapologetic depictions of brutality. These games walk a fine line between shock value and storytelling, leaving critics and fans divided. For developers, it's a constant push and pull between artistic freedom and societal expectations. How do you tell a compelling story without compromising your ethical boundaries? Or should developers have ethical boundaries at all? Here's where things get even more complex: the player. Unlike other forms of media, games put the power in your hands. Your choices shape the story, dictate the outcomes, and determine whether your character takes the violent path or avoids it entirely. Consider the Mass Effect series, where moral dilemmas force players to weigh their decisions carefully. Do you sacrifice one life to save many or find a way to spare everyone? Games like Red Dead Redemption 2 push this idea further, allowing players to switch between honorable and dishonorable paths. Every violent action has consequences on the game's world and on your character's personal journey. But what happens when a game gives you total freedom with no moral compass to guide you? Open world games like Grand Theft Auto V and Cyberpunk 2077 let players wreak havoc without punishment, raising questions about accountability. Are these games encouraging reckless behavior, or are they simply reflecting the chaotic nature of human choice? As technology evolves, so too does the realism of violence in games. Advanced graphics, motion capture, and AI have made virtual combat more immersive than ever. But this realism comes with new ethical dilemmas. Take virtual reality VR games, for example. Titles like Blade and Sorcery and Superhot VR give players a first person perspective of combat. The experience is visceral, almost lifelike. In VR, the line between simulation and reality begins to blur. How does this level of immersion affect players' perceptions of violence? Meanwhile, the gaming industry is exploring alternatives to traditional combat. Games like Undertale reward players for avoiding violence, offering pacifist paths that challenge conventional mechanics. Indie developers are experimenting with storytelling techniques that emphasize empathy over destruction, proving that games don't need violence to be engaging. The question is, will mainstream games follow suit, or will violence remain a cornerstone of the medium? And if it does, how will developers ensure it's handled responsibly? As gamers, creators, and critics, we all have a role to play in shaping the ethics of video games. Whether we're pushing boundaries, challenging norms, or simply enjoying the ride, one thing is clear: the debate over virtual violence isn't going away. So, where do you stand? Is it art, entertainment, or something more? The conversation is yours to continue.